Throne and Liberty is actually good now. I'm excited. This could be amazing, honestly.
Earlier this month, we saw the official Korean release of Throne and Liberty. Now, I've been keeping a close eye on this, as this is, I think, one of the few good-looking MMOs planned to launch globally in 2024.
True.
Naturally, now that the game is live and playable in Korea, I wanted to know what people thought. While we do expect there to be some difference between the Korean and global versions, fact is,
the biggest difference between the global and Korean versions most likely is 100% monetization. Korea is gonna get the brunt of the monetization because they don't care. They like getting taken for a ride, it seems like. The rest of the world likes to, be pay pigs a little bit less, so it is what it is. So expect a lot less monetization than in Korea. And some systems are going to be a lot more, friendly to players. Most likely, that's going to be it.
is much of the core game will almost certainly stay the same. So with that said, how is it? Like, what do people think about Throne and Liberty now that they've played it? Well, for starters, good news is that it looks like the game itself is actually quite good. After implementing changes based on beta feedback, most of the major gameplay and systems complaints have been addressed to the point where people seem to really enjoy playing Throne and Liberty. Pretty much all of the reviews that I have watched and read have been mostly positive about the game, with a few noteworthy exceptions and
yeah, most people are pretty happy on how this is working because, let's face it, the moment everyone saw that, wait a minute, there's autoplay, auto fun here that you're supposed to put on during the night is like, no, I do not want to log in, in the next day and see my character in a different location doing random things and I have no idea what's happening. Yeah, that sounded stupid, so they removed that part. And the obvious big one is combat. Combat in this game at the start was, well, let me put it like this. If you were PvPing and you were running away from someone, you were invulnerable. Because there were no skills that can be cast or used while moving. Yeah. Somehow the developers actually thought that people don't want to move while playing the game. Which is absolutely mind-blowing stupidity, but that's fine. And the main bad thing that people are probably thinking about is it pay to win. Now, someone commented already on my previous video about this and said, wait, I have played the Korean version and, well, it is pay to win. You can take your real-life money and buy the end-game armors and weapons. Well, you can't take your endgame money. Well, you can't take your real-life money. You take your real-life money, convert it into the not real-life money, and then you use the not real-life money to buy the in-game items and weapons that are the best in slot. And that's going to be the pay to win. Now, admittedly, I know this sounds probably horrible, but, there's a huge but here. Well, it's only the base level. And everything, and upgrading it, you cannot buy it as much as we know currently. But yeah, there is gonna be definitely pay to win. But if it's pay to win of that type, I'm kind of okay probably with it. It's not a big deal. If someone wants to whale, do it. I don't care about you. The whales are gonna all go in one guild, and you're never gonna have to interact or see them honestly. So it's not gonna be a big issue.
Complaints about some specific elements, which we will of course cover. But overall, yes, it seems like people like Throne and Liberty. Now, one of the major things is the combat. The once static, heavily rooted combat system that had little to no movement did get a total overhaul. It now looks to be much more in line with other modern day tab target MMOs, allowing for the use of basic attacks and many skills while on the move, having some built-in.
I like how people often say tab target like it's a bad thing. Bruh. Tab targeting is the thing that has survived the test of time, okay? Your instant action combo wombo type of stuff doesn't get a large audience. I don't know why some people think tab targeting is a bad thing, because tab targeting is the best gameplay system we have by a landslide. We don't have an alternative for it currently. Everything where people have to aim their abilities on their own, and do all of that stuff, doesn't survive the test of time on average. Every single MMO that has been successful is tab targeting or semi-tab targeting. Black Desert Online is the only this type of MMO that, is successful in my opinion without being fully tab targeted. That's it. Tab targeting is not a bad thing.
In movement to certain skills like melee attacks that lunge you forward, for example, while also having some abilities that do root you in place, specifically for some of the more heavy hitting attacks or channeled spells.
Makes
so
sense.
Now, instead of being forced to stand completely motionless to perform 99% of attacks and do any damage, Throne and Liberty's combat is much more balanced and along the lines of other popular tab target games such as World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy XIV, or Star Wars: The Old Republic. And to be clear, the issue was never
Rip Star Wars: The Old Republic, boys.
that you had to stand still sometimes to attacks, because that's actually quite normal in tab target MMOs. No, it was the fact that you had to stand still constantly to do any damage whatsoever. If you or your target moved, no attacks happened. So combat basically devolved into these
Look at that. Invulnerable. You're running away. GG.
standoffs where both players would sit motionless, staring deep into each other's eyes while spamming abilities. And if you or your opponent didn't want to fight anymore, you just had to turn around and walk away. And for melee classes, that meant having to chase them until they decided to stop moving, because while they were moving, you were not doing any damage ever. So if they just kept walking away, you couldn't do anything. You would just keep chasing them until they stood still. And if they didn't stand still, oh well, too bad. But yes, now with these changes in place, there is much more balance to the combat. You can basic attack while running, cast many of your abilities on the move, and even gain ground with certain abilities that act as gap closers. So yeah, it is now much more like what you are probably familiar with if you have played basically any of the popular tab target MMOs over these past like 20 or so years.
You have only played tab targeting MMOs because those are the only good ones. Show me a single non-tab target MMO that actually works. Oh, Wild Stars was actually good. No, Wild Stars was absolute garbage dumpster fire that only a handful of people liked. Yeah, that's your best example of non-tab targeting, okay? Hey, I'm not saying you can't make anything that's not tab target combat, right? But I'm also kind of saying if you want to fail your game, you should probably try to make it not tab target, because tab target losers.
On top of that, though, they do have some other things like this reactive block system where certain enemy attacks will cause a purple indicator to appear with a shrinking circle, and if you time your block input correctly, you get what's called a perfect block. And they've also added this action cam, which removes your cursor and causes mouse movement to swing both the character and camera in sync. This is basically added and ideal for playing with a controller, which makes a lot of sense as this game will be launching on consoles as well as PC. And with these changes, player feedback that I've seen has basically been overwhelmingly positive. Every single review that I've watched so far has said it feels much, much better. Now, obviously, if you prefer action combat a la what is seen in Black Desert or Terra, well, you're gonna be out of luck because that's not what this is. But if you enjoy the combat systems of...
I don't even know what Terra is. Oh, Terra, the dead game. Oh yeah, another one non-tab target combat game that's dead. Wow. We're seeing a pattern here, I think.
World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy XIV or ArcAge, Throne and Liberty should now be much more up your alley. That said, I have heard that things start off pretty slow for the first like 15 or 20 levels, but then pick up with time as you progress and get access to new skills. MMO-centric YouTuber Canon specifically told me that combat starts slow and feels akin to like the World of Warcraft classic warrior experience, where you're kind of auto-attacking, you get a few skills that you use on cooldown, but those cooldowns are relatively long. It's pretty simplistic early on, but towards the end game, as you...
I mean, that's not too much of a problem. Have you played a warrior? You know, just put a bunch of talent points in overpower and, go fight mobs that are 3 levels higher than you and just, insta-kill them almost. Yeah, warriors aren't that bad. I personally don't like warriors, but at the same time, man, warriors can't just, charge mob and 2-shot it, so there you kind of go. And, that gameplay is pretty liked by a lot of people, so I don't see a problem too much.
unlock more skills and things progress, it gets a lot more similar to something like Arc Age's combat, which he said he personally really enjoys. Yeah, in general, I've heard really...
I have never played Arc Age, by the way.
Positive things about the combat system, which is a big deal for me. Now, another thing to note is that Throne and Liberty is a classless MMO where your character abilities are determined by the weapons you use. So instead of picking a mage, tank, or healer, you select from 2 of the game's 7 weapons. There is the crossbow, dagger, greatsword, longbow, staff, sword and shield, and wand and tome. Each of these come with their own skill tree.
Yeah. And this is what makes this viable. This is what makes this useful. Because the biggest problem, the most popular example that does this is, it's actually, look at that, it's a Snoots video. Nice. We actually saw this, by the way, we watched this. But the biggest example that does this is Guild Wars. Obviously not New World. New World is garbage. If you're gonna say it's not, then you're just an absolute pretender poser, 0.1% of a loser. Okay? It is what it is. It's fun to mine and chop trees in New World, but New World combat sucks. And one of the reasons why it sucks is because it has this system, but it does it woefully badly. Okay? The better system, obviously, is Guild Wars. But Guild Wars also is not a perfect system because you feel extremely locked into whatever you're doing. And, Guild Wars would honestly probably... Well, Guild Wars would just honestly hugely benefit as a game from adding new ways to mix and match weapon skills. That's what should be done in Guild Wars, honestly. If they did that, that would be huge. Because the worst part about Guild Wars is definitely the weapon system. It feels just bad in some aspects. And this, considering all that we're seeing here, is not gonna be like that. This looks way better.
That has active and passive abilities, and then from that you select what you want, which is very similar to how it works in like New World or Albion Online. It does seem that there is a lot of skill interaction, customization, and combo potential with you having 2 weapons equipped at a time, and as such having 2 skill trees to pull from. I was also happy to hear that the game will not require constant back and forth weapon swapping, thank goodness. Instead, it looks like when you use a skill...
Also good. Also really, really good. Now, I can't tell if this is how this game is gonna work, like, for example, here, as you can see, but my dream is like this. Weapon swapping, well, dual weapon usage could actually be really cool if, you have 5 abilities from each weapon to pick, and, like, maybe even, like, passives, right? Passives that you can get from these weapons. And then you have, a choice. You can only have 5 active abilities from, for example, a sword, but the sword actually has like 13 different abilities that you can pick from. That would be amazing. And multiple passives like that. If they did that, that would be obviously super amazing in my opinion. I don't know if they're gonna do it, but if Guild Wars wants to steal that idea, please steal it.
From. I was also happy to hear that the game will not require constant back and forth weapon swapping, thank goodness. Instead, it looks like when you use a skill on your hotbar, it automatically swaps weapons for you. So say you're using the longbow and daggers. Maybe you open up from range, casting something like Ensnaring Arrow and Arrow Vortex. That will be using your bow. But then as the enemy gets closer to you, you may want to use your Shadow Strike for your daggers, but you won't need to manually swap to daggers. Just hitting the keybind for that ability will then swap weapons for you. This is a big relief to me, as probably one of the biggest annoyances with these dual weapon games like ESO, New World, or Guild Wars 2 is like the required constant manual swapping between weapons. That's what I dislike the most about dual weapon systems. Okay, so combat feels a lot better.
Oh yeah, there's also Elder Scrolls Online, a game so sad that I forgot it exists.
There's more movement to it. If you like tab target games, if you like WoW, Final Fantasy XIV, if you liked Arc Age, you'll probably like the combat system here. And while it is a weapon-based class system, I'm also happy to hear that there's no hotbar swapping required. All of that is really awesome. And that's really one of the biggest things for me. Like, the game feeling good to play is the #1 priority as to whether or not I'm going to want to play a game long term. A very close second to that in terms of importance is actually the content. Like, what things are there to do, see, and experience in the game? As for Throne and Liberty, What do they got, and is it any good? Well, it does appear like they have managed to deliver a traditional open world theme park MMO. Much of what you expect with this sort of game is going to be here, with a few noteworthy elements. The game's open world has been one of the most...
You have an open world, you're gonna go do quests, kill mobs, maybe there's something to do in the open world, no one's gonna give a crap, everyone's gonna do the fastest leveling thing, and there you go. Bam. Done.
Most praised elements outside of the combat that I have seen in every review. It is massive, seamless, has no loading screens, instant teleportation, even going from character creator to playing is almost instantaneous. And while you're playing the game, there are tons of players. I have seen gameplay clips that easily have 100 plus players all in a small confined area, and that gameplay looked to be running fairly smoothly. The typical assortment of MMO questing will be in this open world. You'll be asked to kill X number of enemies, gather resources, interact with objects, find NPCs, or go and fetch an item. Again, about what you expect. Also, what's pretty great here is how good it looks. Just fantastic. The visuals of this game are really good. What has impressed me the most from everything I've seen has been the render distance. I mean, you can see things from miles away, and for me, that creates a really immersive...
And it doesn't look even bad. Like, look at it here. That's probably a huge distance away. But it doesn't look bad, which is kind of crazy.
Experience. It really feels like you were in this world when you can see clearly so far, and even more so when there's tons of players running around as well. And the game's traversal system really rewards exploration with the ability to glide. You've got a grapple hook and mantling. There's a lot of freedom of moving around and exploring in the environment. Now, what sort of activities besides those basic quests that I announced? Well, you've got open world events. Every single zone has these hourly public events that take place where you'll have to complete some task for a reward, like collecting wolf tails or killing goblins or whatever. Sometimes these will be PvP flagged as well, so you'll have to fight off other players while attempting to complete your task. Killing players will even cause them to drop items.
I'm not gonna lie, PvP is a joke in MMOs nowadays. Like, every game, every PvP-centric MMO has pretty much lost at this point. World of Warcraft, I think, is the strongest one keeping it afloat, but man, it's even then it's a joke. Like, you look at retail World of Warcraft, what's happening in the PvP scene, everyone's complaining that it is, well, deader than dead. Essentially, that's a good summarization. So, World PvP, I mean, it sounds cool and it's cool to experience, but I don't think a game should honestly focus at this day and age for PvP. At least MMORPGs. It seems pointless. It seems like something that goes nowhere because no one wants to PvP.
If that quest has you farming for items. And leveling looks to involve mainly focusing on the main story quest as it rewards the most experience, but then also in between doing the main story, weaving in some of these world events, exploration quest to bump up your level during any main story quest bottlenecks. There's a few variety of dungeons in the game. There are open world non-instance dungeons, one of the things that I am most excited for. These are big sprawling...
Yeah, boy, the Anarchy Online dungeon type, boy. Man, remember the good times in Anarchy Online when it was popular and you were a little kid, and even if you knew at least one single money-making method, you were the big cheese because no one had any idea what's even valuable in that game. Dude, playing Anarchy Online as a kid when we were 13 and 12 was horrific, okay? The only way, I only knew 2 ways to make money. No, actually 3 ways. 4 ways. One was doing mission centers for fast money. The other one was doing missions for concrete cushions. The third one was morphing memory in the subway. Again, why does that matter? I don't know. Morphing memory had some kind of defense stat for fire, I think, or something like that. It was pretty good in some niche situations in the end game, I think. 4-man safe cracking, and Temple of Treewind exchanging the suits for the breakables teleport stuff. Yeah. That was what I knew for money making, and that was pretty insane, man. Anarchy Online, man, that was a time. You remember when you were just like AFKing in the Temple of Tremens at the last boss room, and you're like I'm just waiting for the respawns, and there's some super buffed Ultra Twing that's level like I don't know 70, but is stronger than average level 200 because of the way you could way you could twink out your characters. Oh man, that was insane. Good times, good times. I wonder if you were gonna be able to do the same here. I mean, look at this map. Look at this map. Do you know what I'm saying, boys?
Areas that have tons of normal and elite enemy packs as well as bosses, but they're fully open, so players can come and go as they please. There's no instancing here. And another interesting twist to this is that during the daytime, they will be fully PvE, but during nighttime, which lasts for about half an hour, it's like a 2-hour and then half an hour rotation from day to night. During those nighttime hours, the dungeons are then open PvP. Really, really cool twist to that to make it, I guess, just more engaging and add some variety there. There's also regular instance dungeons, 9 of these in the game. These are for groups of 6 players. It's your typical setup. Form your group of people, move into the dungeon, clear through groups of ads, and then take on a boss at the end. And then there's also the solo content through Taydel's Tower. This is a solo like boss tower climb as you move through these floors from one to the next, fighting increasingly more challenging bosses. Speaking of bosses, there are world bosses. It appears like they've got around 15 field bosses in the game, all located through various spots in the open world. These open world boss battles will be quite difficult and scaled up to the number of players, potentially again over 100. And all around across the board, it looks like boss fights do have some interesting mechanics from what we've seen. Things like, don't stand in the fire, crowd control ads, or they kill the group, pull bombs away from other players, stacking on top of each other to prevent damage or heal, line of sight mechanics. If you've played MMOs before, you have a rough idea of what to expect from these boss fights, but I have heard there's some interesting boss fights with interesting mechanical variety. And then there is the open world PvP. PvP will be a big part of this game, but it is also up to your discretion whether or not
I don't think it's gonna last.
You engage it. Any of the game's PvP will be clearly marked. There are timers that tell you when PvP events in the open world are going to be taking place. Like there will be certain zones that will fluctuate from being PvP flagged and then solely PvE. There's also those open...
Yeah, you see the problem with whole zones being flagged is the fact that, you can't even single PvP. Like, the biggest problem with PvP in games like this is not the fact that people don't want a PvP. Some people want a PvP. But if you have whole zones flagged for PvP, you know what's going to happen. A group of people is just going to dominate the living, everything out of it. It's not going to be even close. It's not going to be even funny. They're just going to absolutely dominate. A clan or a group of people is going to dominate everything. You have no chance as a single player. And well, if you're going as a group, are you even good at PvP?
World events, which will sometimes be PvP flagged, but again, you can tell ahead of time exactly when this is going to happen. So if you want to avoid the PvP, you can, but if you enjoy PvP, there will be a lot of it on offer. And then also, it's worth mentioning, from everything we've seen, there is a really big focus on guild play in this game. It is required for much of the higher tier content, both in PvE and PvP. There's a guild ranking system with guild quest and contributions that level up your guild. This will do things like unlock new rewards, access to new skills, and open up new content. You've got a guild hall.
The content is the most important part, as we know from Stoops' video, and here he is, by the way. This is gonna be pretty interesting. You're gonna have guild progression. You're gonna do things for the guild, and then as a guild, you're gonna gain access to new content to raid. That's going to be pretty interesting.
All that will have vendors in it, as well as, of course, your other guild members running around. And the guild hall also has a portal to guild raids, which are essentially instanced versions of those open world boss fights. Yeah, and in terms of the basic gameplay loop of this game, well, it looks like it's going to work like this. You will be heavily incentivized to do a variety of activities. You'll focus on the main story quest because that is the biggest bang for your buck.
Wait, this is the first time I see this. Oh my god, yes, Daddy, please. Okay, you know what's happening here? This person is playing the game, and he's just clicking on the moonstone. Click! And your character's automatically... Oh, yes. Oh, baby, please, yes.
A variety of
Oh, that's so good. I love when games allow you to do this. You just click on the resource, you straight line it to it and mine it. That's so good.
activities. You'll focus on the main story quest because that is the biggest bang for your buck in terms of experience for leveling up, but that will be woven with doing world bosses, with doing open world PvP, with doing exploration quest and zone events. I've been told that everything is basically worth your time in the leveling up process. You won't have to choose between doing what you find most fun. Like, maybe I really like PvP, but it really slows up your leveling process. Well, apparently everything that you do, all of these various open world activities, will be rewarding towards your game progression and is worth your time to do. Speaking of progression, let's talk about that. Now, back during the beta, which had all of the autoplay features, which have since been removed, progression speed was a major complaint. Leveling up your character, your skills, acquiring gold and materials, everything took forever and felt overly grindy. But now, with the removal of the autoplay features, they basically retuned all of the game's progression and farming speeds. The time required to level your character and skills was drastically reduced. The amount of gold and materials acquired from all sources was increased, and to go along with that, the resources required for things like crafting and upgrading stuff has been reduced. Basically, across the board, the game was made way less grindy. Now, that said, it is still an MMO, it is still a Korean MMO, and there's absolutely a lot of grind here. This is going to be a grind-focused game, but at least now it does feel much more in line with typical MMO progression and not artificially inflated like it was during the beta when they had all those
Is that, I wonder, it? Because I don't think there's anything else to cover.
Autoplay features and expected that everyone's character would be farming 24/7, either because a person was manually playing or because they turned on the autoplay features and left their game running. It is really awesome to hear that the game itself seems to be really fun to play. The gameplay has been drastically improved, and it's got a lot of interesting open world content. They really do seem to be delivering a solid open world theme park MMO. However, the bad news is that, as predicted, it is pretty much confirmed at this point that the game is very pay to win. So for starters, the cash shop called Lottie's Star sells the following. You can purchase the premium currency, which is known as Lucent, and with that currency, you can do things like purchase emotes for your character or cosmetics to look pretty, or you can purchase items that remove the experience loss on death. And turns out that if you get 20 of these deaths that have this kind of stacking debuff, you eventually get reduction to things like your movement speed, which is pretty awful. So trying to reduce this death penalty,
yeah, this is not gonna stay in the game 100%. This is too much.
Will be pretty important. But then probably the biggest, most glaring thing is the fact that the game's marketplace is essentially a real money auction house. Players who find good weapons and gear can post them on the marketplace, and then those items will be purchased by other players.
Oh yeah, I forgot about this. True. This is not a problem. Okay, a real money auction house it's in the sense that people have the ability to buy this this currency that you can buy stuff for, so it is pay to win. But every person has an ability to literally post anything and everything on the auction house for, the special currency. So you don't have to buy it. This is probably the fairest way of pay to win that exists, honestly. So I am completely 100% okay with this. I'm not gonna lie, I don't give a shit. If I can farm a little bit of gold and get a skin, time to time, I'm kind of okay with that. Again, this is not a problem. If anyone calls this the super big ender for them, this is the game ruining moment, I think you're dumb, not gonna lie. I mean, it's a free-to-play game, obviously. It's gonna have to make money somehow. And, well, when it's free-to-play, by the way, I'm not defending free-to-play at all, that they must go pay-to-win. But hey, from all the pay-to-win mechanics, I think this is as fair as it gets. It could have been a lot more egregious, honestly. And I think this is definitely as fair as it gets. So I have no problems with this. It's to be expected. If you didn't expect this, well, sucks to suck, I guess. Anyway, is this it?
With Lucent, which is the premium cash shop currency. So any player can spend...
Yeah, it seems like that was it. Very good overview Force Gaming. 10 out of 10. Absolutely would love. Kiss me now, you absolute rugged man. Anyway, this was Quizzer Said. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. And have a nice day. Bye-bye.